We still do 7 NUFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you,
Good evening, welcome along to NUFC Matters. Those were the days, FACup special, and it is welcome to George again, who is taking us back to the days of 1955, George.
Yes, that's right. A great year, a great period. I put that on because that's the city coat of arms, and traditionally that's what we used to wear on our shirts when we went to Wembley, and was the case until 1974. But that's another discussion for another time. But that's the coat of arms, and that's the two strips we used to wear: the traditional home strip, and the away strip was always white shirt, black shorts with the black and white socks, and that was like that for a long time. Actually, I'm interested listening to people talking about friendlies recently, and in those days, in the 50s even, they used to have a couple of games where possibles, the probables, ended up being first team attack against first team defense, basically, and they used to play in those colours, and they used to charge people to get in as well, and they were quite well supported. But I can't say I'm sorry that disappeared, because it was a fruitless exercise as far as I was concerned. Anyway, 65. And there's the first game, Plymouth Argyle. Plymouth Argyle, we were drawn out of the hat against, and it was always one of the longest trips, away trips. From a personal point of view, it was always an interesting trip when we were drawn at Plymouth or Portsmouth, largely because my family had a smattering of ex-sailors in it from the Royal Navy. And of course, they were based at Plymouth a lot of the time, as well as Portsmouth. And indeed, one or two of the shipmates married girls down there. So they ended up having lots of friends there. So a trip to Plymouth for us was, our family was always a big thing. And that's the next one. It was always an entertaining weekend. And of course, we used to hire Holland's bus, Ronnie Holland's bus to go down, and it was like a family trip. It wasn't just a football trip. So this draw was the one that was interesting to us, but it wasn't a very interesting game. It was quite a dull game. Two teams that were almost frightened of each other. To be basically, the Plymouth side was Bill Short, Paddy Ratcliffe, Neil Dougal, Rex Tilley, George Robertson, Hugh McJarrow, Sammy McCory, Neil Langman, George Willis, and Peter Anderton. And Sammy McCory was the star. He was their star Scots forward and the danger man. And we, by this time, were managed by Dougie Livingston, who Seymour had brought from the continent. Dougie Livingston had made his name as one of the coaches that coached outside of the UK. He was like Mitten. He did a bit in South America, then he did a bit in the Far East, and then he came back to Europe and coached in Europe. And he was doing a fantastic job coaching the Belgian national side when Seymour persuaded him to come and manage Newcastle United, and he had a couple of good seasons. And just as Seymour hoped that he would take Newcastle to another cup run, and this was the start of that cup run. Now our side was fairly predictable. Ronnie Simpson, Bobby Cowell, Ronnie Batty at left back because Michael was injured. Jimmy Schooler was our captain then. Interestingly, Jimmy Schooler had captained Portsmouth to the league championship a couple of years beforehand, and Seymour had persuaded him to come and join Newcastle after that, in the hope that he could take Newcastle forward. And what an incredible player he was. His reputation was about his hard tackles. He had thighs like tree trunks, and if you got trapped by a Schooler in a tackle, you knew he had been tackled. But another gentle giant off the pitch, I can assure you. And Bob Stokoe, centre half. Stan Keary was the other half back because we were Charlie Crowe was injured. Stan Keary was a young Scotsman. Looked like he had a promising future, but it didn't last more than a couple of seasons. And then outside right was Tommy Walker, of course. Then Ivor Broadus, who was on his way out, really great England international. Ivor, well known because of his comments about the English selectors. He named the English selectors the Blazers because he couldn't help but notice when the team turned up for training or for matches, the people who were wearing the England Blazers were the selectors more than the players were. Ivor Broadus, Vic Keeble, Jackie Milburn, and Bobby Mitchell. And despite all that talent on view, it wasn't the best of games. It went to into a midfield battle. It got lost. There were very few shots on goal, and it was no surprise when a goal came from set piece, from a corner, a Mitchell corner, and Vic Keeble with one of his signature headers from the edge of the box put the ball in the back of the net on 34 minutes. So he went in at half time at 1-0, and that's how it stayed. That's how it stayed. 29,000 in Home Park for that match, which was the biggest crowd that had that season. It's interesting. We've always had good relationships with Plymouth as a club, as was evidenced by the way they reacted to our promotion a few years ago. We went in 1-0 at half time. There was the big hope that we would come out and change things, but it stayed exactly the same dour stuff. Lots of midfield play, very few shots on target, and Newcastle going into the next round with a 1-0 victory. The next round was Brentford, and I think that's the next one. Yeah, and Brentford were a team on the up at the time, and were always going to make things difficult for Newcastle. We played. Dougie Livingston played Simpson, Cowell, Batty, Schooler, Stokoe, Tommy Casey, Jackie Milburn, George Hanna, Vic Keeble, Bill Curry, and Bobby Mitchell. Bill Curry was a local lad who is one of the players who got saddled with the title of the next Jackie Milburn. He was a local lad and background very similar to Jackie Milburn. and you know, every time he played, he was labelled with this this title that he was going to be the next Jackie Milburn. Bill was a tidy player, a good player, but not in the same class as Jackie Milburn, I'm afraid. Anyway, Brentford came with a good side, good reputation, managed by Bill Dodson Senior, who used to play for Arsenal, and before he went to Brentford, and then he became Brentford's manager. Sammy Feenan, Ken Holm, Ken Coote, Tony Harper, George Bristow, Dennis Heath, Elwyn James Towers, George Stobart. George Stobart was a Geordie and had briefly been on the books of Newcastle United before he went to Brentford, and but he didn't make his way at all at Newcastle. But as soon as he got to Brentford, he seemed to push his way through the ranks and found himself at centre forward in the first team, as he was in this game. Johnny Radford and Frank Dudley. Frank Dudley was a dangerous left-sided player who was tipped to do all sorts of wonderful things for England. It was a good football match. 47,000 in the ground for this fourth round, and game was end-to-end stuff in the first half, but nobody actually getting to anywhere near scoring the goals. Lots of things fizzing past the post and fizzing past here, there, and everywhere, but not actually going in the net. Until on 46 minutes, just after half time, a through ball from George Hanna found Bill Curry in a nice spot, and he rattled the ball at the bottom of the net from the corner of the goal area to give us a 1-0 lead. And so everybody thought, well, we'll go on and take this now. Well, little did we think that here is young Stobart at centre forward for Brentford. He's not going to let that happen. So on 63 minutes, Stobart makes it 1-1, and we've still got a fight in our hands. And then some little bit later, and some magic from George Hanna, who was a real twinkle toes midfielder, and he scored a beautiful solo goal on 70 minutes to make it 2-1. And again, everybody relaxed a little bit and thought, well, here we go. Well, we didn't here go, because Rashford, their dangerous midfielder, on 71 minutes, got a header from a corner and made it 2-2. And things were getting quite exciting in the Gallagher corner by this time. But then, as always, just to calm the nerves, Twinkletoes himself, Bobby Mitchell, came down the left-hand side, beat 3 or 4 defenders, left them trailing in his wake, and virtually rolled the ball underneath the goalkeeper to make it 3-2, and to give us a victory to push us into the 5th round of the FA Cup. A very entertaining game. There's no question about that, and a one which is memorable. Because of the intensity of where the goals all happened, but they were all good goals as well, and the input of a Geordie, an exiled Geordie in the opposition, always adds a bit of spice to a game. The next game is the 5th round, and we're drawn away to Forest, and everything to do with it's strange when we seem to play Forest. There's always something spectacular happening, and we go with hopes that we'll get a victory into the next round, but it isn't that easy. We're having a really tough time. And Doug Livingston Sands, Ronnie Simpson, Bobby Cowell, Ron Batty, Jimmy Schooler, Bobby Stoko, Tommy Casey, Jackie Milburn, Reg Davis, the Welsh international midfielder, very lightweight but a very, very clever, quick player. Len White playing at centre forward. Vic Keeble alongside him, and Bobby Mitchell on the left-hand side. Forest were managed by Billy Walker, who was an old player of theirs and an old Birmingham City captain as well. Billy Walker was the manager, and they played Billy Farmer in goal, Billy Ware, Jeff Thomas, Bill Morley, Bob McKinley. Bob McKinley was a fantastic defender and Scottish captain at the time, and was always going to make life difficult for our forwards. And the forward line of Freddie Scott, Jackie French, Tammy Wilson, Jimmy Barrett, and Barrett was an England international, and Peter Small, who was a dangerous left-sided attacker. But it wasn't the football fest that people thought it might be. It was quite a dour game, because neither side looked like they were going to get anything in the net. Lot of play in midfield, not a lot happening until 85 minutes. Their dangerous forward Small sneaked through from a free kick and headed past Ronnie Simpson to make it 1-0. And at 85 minutes, everybody thought, well, it's going to take something to get back into this game. But they hadn't counted on a certain gentleman called Jackie Milburn, who they'd hardly time to kick the ball off for the restart, when Jackie scored from about 35 yards, one of his blinders. 86 minutes it's recorded as the goal equaliser, but the reality is, doubt it was even a minute. They barely kicked off before it was sitting in the back of the Forest net, and really knocked them for 6. So the next 5 minutes plus a little bit of extra time, Forest spent defending the goal, because by then Newcastle, of course, had the hackles up, and Mitchell and Milburn and George Hanna were making their life quite difficult. So that ended 1-1 to bring us to a replay at St James's Park, and that replay was had 40,000 in the ground. Forest played an unchanged team. We played Ronnie Simpson, Bobby Cowell, Ron Batty, Jimmy Schooler, Bob Stoko, Tommy Casey, and then the forward line slightly changed. Jackie Milburn, Ivor Broadus, Vic Keeble, George Hanna, and Bobby Mitchell. And it's interesting in these cup matches, you see the versatility of Jackie Milburn being able to play out on the wide on the right or the left, and up the middle, and occasionally as an attacking midfielder. Anyway, it was an interesting game, and it looked like we were going to walk it. 9 minutes, Vic Keeble from a corner, a signature header at the far corner, left the goalkeeper scrambling, and we were 1-0 up. And I think the rumblings in the Gallagher corner, I can remember being at that match, and we were going to walk this. This was going to be easy. Just before half time, Bobby Mitchell danced his way down the left-hand side, as was his wont, and left a stream of defenders lying in his wake. The irritation with Bobby is that people used to say he used to go back and beat the defenders twice just to show how good he was. He was a very, very talented ball player. Anyway, 44 minutes and bang, it was 2-0, and it went to half time like that, and people thought, well, we're in for a cricket score in the second half. Well, like everything in football, you can never be certain of anything. And it was an upside down match. As when Forest came out, they were a different team. And they were taking the initiative. Whether our lot had taken the foot off the gas a little bit, I don't know. But on 55 minutes, Barrett scored. And on 62 minutes, Scott equalised with a class goal from a dead ball, from a free kick, and so we got the 2-2, and that's the way it stayed. Nobody could break the deadlock, and even in extra time it stayed 2-2. So it meant there had to be a second replay, which in those days was not uncommon, but the problems they had arranging the second replay was usually second replays were generally held on a neutral ground. Well, unfortunately, they couldn't find a neutral ground available in the time scale that they wanted, and so there was a lot of to and fro. And when Seymour suggested to the FA, well, why not settle it with a football way and have a toss-up? And whoever gets heads or tails play it at their ground. So they had a toss-up, and Newcastle won the toss. And so the second replay was unusually played at St James's Park by now with a 38,000 crowd, and some changes in both teams, with Peter Small going wide left and Jackie French coming in to the Forest forward line. A very talented attacking Scottish player. And Newcastle, of course, one or two changes as well. They Ronnie Simpson, Bobby Cowell, Ronnie Batty, Jimmy Schooler, Bob Stoto, and Tommy Casey. And then the forward line, Len White, Reg Davies, Alan Monkhouse at centre forward, Jackie Milburn at number 10, and Bobby Mitchell. Alan Monkhouse was a forward that came from Stockton, came with a huge non-league reputation, scoring goals for Toffee, and again was someone else who was labelled with the next Milburn tag. And he was a talented player, there's no question. And so it was not surprising to see him breaking into the first team, because he'd been doing all sorts of amazing things in the Central League with the reserves. So Alan Monkhouse was the centre forward, and we got off to a difficult start, put it mildly, when Billy Wilson of Scotland and Forest on 22 minutes put Forest in the lead, and give everybody in the Gallagher corner shivers up their spines, wondering if we'd blown a gasket by having a second replay. But lo and behold, on 28 minutes, Alan Monkhouse, who had come into the side, scored a peach of a goal to make it 1-1. The game went to 1-1 to half time. After half time, teams came out, and it was a lot of end-to-end stuff, but nobody threatening the goal seriously. So eventually, of course, it went into extra time, and it looked like for all there was going to be another replay, a third replay, which would have been amazing, and even then unusual. But as the game wore on, it was clear that Forest were tiring a lot quicker than our lads were. And on 117 minutes, well into the extra time, Alan Monkhouse scored a very talented solo goal, picked the ball up just inside our half, and then turned the defence and ran straight up the middle through two or three of them, their centre backs and their midfielders, and slotted the ball underneath Farmer, the Forest goalkeeper, to make it 2-1. and it was clear from the body language of the Forest players. It was very unlikely that that they would come back and turn it into anything other than a Newcastle victory. But our victory into the next round in a hard-fought one. So we make progress into the quarter final of the FA Cup, and we get drawn against Huddersfield, who were one of the top footballing sides in the first division in those days. We drawn away again, which was, it's the third out of 4 games we've been drawn away, and we went to their ground, Leeds Road, and 56,000 in Leeds Road, which was their capacity. For anybody that's interested in the history of grounds, Leeds Road was a typical pre-war football ground. It was built basically out of railway sleepers. The terracing was railway sleepers. The stand was built, all the girders were railway sleepers. It really was a wooden shack, the stand. And I can remember being there for a league match much later on, going with a friend to an away match, a league match, away match, and sitting in that stand. And when we scored, the stand swayed when the crowd started to cheer, a bit like the Old Trafford did in that semi-final that we won there against Tottenham. Anyway, we went to Leeds Road, and it was a good game. Huddersfield were managed by Andy Beattie, very famous Scottish midfielder and former Huddersfield player. And their team was Jack Wheeler, Ron Staniforth. Ron Staniforth was England's right back. Laurie Kelly, Bill McGarry, there's a name we know in the Northeast, who eventually became our manager. Keir Taylor, Albert Hudson, Barry Watson, Jimmy Gazzard. Jimmy Gazzard was an old-fashioned centre forward, 6'2", 6'3", very beefy, and he used his muscle in playing. A latter-day Billy Whitehurst, if you like, and Brian Fear, and on the left side of their attack, left wing, as I would call it, Victor Metcalf, who was an England international. A good side, but and playing entertaining football. The press, of course, had labelled the game Mitchell versus Staniforth, because Mitchell was our left-sided player and Staniforth was their right back. And to some extent it was. He kept Bobby Mitchell quiet, but unfortunately he kept him quiet in with a bit of roughhousing, people would say. It certainly curbed our attack quite a bit. So we go into this game with Simpson, Cowell, Batty, Schooler, Stokewell, Casey, Tommy Walker, Ivor Broadus, Vic Keeble, Jackie Milburn, and Bobby Mitchell. Alan Monkhouse being dropped down now, and we go into the match with high hopes, but were pinned down for long periods. And Gazzard, that tough centre forward, Jimmy Gazzard, was giving our defence quite a lot of quite a handful to keep hold of. And on 62 minutes, it was no surprise when he stuck the ball in the back of the net for Huddersfield to make it 1-0. And the size, I think, amongst the away fans was palpable. They thought, are we ever going to get back from this one? But in this game, we had Len White playing at centre forward, and Len was a very talented and tricky player, and he interchanged with Keeble, and on 87 minutes slotted in a beautiful goal to to make it 1-1 and get us at least a replay. And that was the best period of this match for Newcastle, because after that it was just backs to the wall for Huddersfield, because by then Bobby Mitchell and others had woken up and were starting to give Huddersfield a lot of problems. The 56,000 at Leeds Road was full house for them. Interestingly, the referee for this match was the referee who refereed our previous cup final match. So we go home to St James's Park for a replay, and 53,000 at St James's Park on a Wednesday night, 16th of March. Huddersfield are unchanged. The same side that gave us problems at Leeds Road, particularly Jimmy Gazzard, the centre forward. They had another talented midfielder called Len Quested, who played for England, who was also a bit of a nuisance to us. Anyway, we sent out Ronnie Simpson, Bobby Cowell, Ron Batty, Jimmy Schooler, Bobby Stowell, Tommy Casey, Len White, Ivor Broadus, Vic Keeble, Jackie Milburn, and Bobby Mitchell. In that forward line, Len White, Vic Keeble, Jackie Milburn, all capable of playing centre forward and playing centre forward very well. Or how we could do with somebody like that now to support Lisa, but never mind. It was a difficult match. End-to-end stuff, but nobody seemed to get near to striking the ball into the net. And the one player that was even capable of upsetting Huddersfield was was Bobby Mitchell. Although Stanningforth was the England left back, Mitchell on this game gave him a torrid time, a really hard time. And on 2 or 3 occasions, the referee warned Stanningforth about his tackling on Mitchell because he was really going in hard to try and stop Mitchell. And there were 1 or 2 scuffles between Stanningforth and 1 or 2 other players. Notably, of all people, Jackie Milburn, who didn't particularly like the way that Stanningforth was taking Bobby Mitchell out of the game, but that didn't stop Bobby. He kept playing and tormented them. But still, it went to 0-0, and we ended up having another set of extra time. So this is becoming quite a marathon, this cup run. Yet another set of extra time against Huddersfield. And just when everybody thought it was going to end up with a second replay, on 103 minutes, Bobby Mitchell just tore the Huddersfield defence to bits and slotted in a beautiful goal on 103 minutes. And then just to seal the game on 111 minutes, typically from a Bobby Mitchell corner, Vic Keeble headed in one of his signature headers to make it 2-0 to Newcastle United. And a victory which was really hard fought, but a one which was thoroughly deserved and against a nice big crowd. So we're now through to the semi-final against York City. York City, 2 divisions below us, but FACup being the FACup, didn't matter a jot how far people were below you. We went to Hillsborough was the semi-final venue in those days, 65,000 packed house. And I remember our lot, again, organising a trip through Holland's buses and going to Hillsborough to the semi-final. The semi-final against York was interesting because at the time York had a young forward called Alf Bottom, and he was the talk of the division. People were desperate to buy him and certainly it was rumoured that Seymour had made at least 2 bids for Bottom, but didn't push it too hard because our manager, Dougie Livingston, wasn't particularly keen on him for some reason. But never mind, he was in this team. It was a good chance to see him up close. As I say, 65,000 at Hillsborough, and a very entertaining game in all and says difficult circumstances. The sort of pitch nowadays we wouldn't even start the game, yet they played the whole game on a pitch that had standing water, puddles in the corners, and that sort of thing. A great leveler, of course, but never mind. After a very short while, it was clear that Newcastle had every opportunity of taking the game, because on 14 minutes from a Bobby Mitchell corner, Vic Keeble made the breakthrough with a nice header, and everybody thought, well, that's it. We'll wait for the next one, but it didn't happen like that. Young Bottom, Arthur Bottom, broke through the Newcastle defence on 30 minutes and made it 1-1, and that's how it stayed till the end of the game. It was just end-to-end stuff, but nobody actually getting near to scoring a goal. Our team was, as it had been in the previous game, with the forward line of White, Reg Davis, Vic Keeble, Jackie Milburn and Bobby Mitchell. And so it was 1-1, and the replay of a semi-final, they tried to pick a ground which was closer to the two, close to both of the teams in the semi-final, and it just so happened that the ground that they decided was the closest was a place called Roker Park, would you believe? And so the replay of the semi-final was played at Roker Park with 60,000 crowd, and it was, needless to say, a full house, and we played Ronnie Simpson, Bobby Cowell, Ron Batty, Jimmy Schooler, Bob Stoko, Charlie Crow, Len White, Reg Davis, Vic Keeble, Jackie Milburn and Bobby Mitchell, and York were unchanged, with Young Bottom playing in the side as well, and with the other dangerous player was the left-sided forward called Billy Fenton, who was a former England international with Stoke City, and was on his way out in terms of his career, but still a very dangerous player. And we couldn't have got off to a better start. We pinned them back straight away, and within 3 minutes we got a corner, and Len White slung the corner in right onto Vic Keeble's head, and on 3 minutes Vic Keeble made it 1-0. However, after that, York City really had a go to it, and Young Bottom in particular, he was causing our defence all sorts of problems. And we went in at half-time at 1-0, came out, and again, York were giving as good as they got. They weren't going to lie down and take defeat easily, and it was end-to-end stuff. Then on 90 minutes, just before the whistle went, Len White picked the ball up just inside the York half and ran the length of the pitch before sliding the ball underneath the York goalkeeper, Tommy Fagan, and giving us a 2-0 victory. But a hard-earned victory against the side which were 2 divisions below us, and of course the cup run was a big thing for York City, because it earned them a lot of money and kind of paid their wages for the next couple of years. So here we are into another final at Wembley against Manchester City, who'd made their way to the final. Newcastle never go to these things without some sort of drama. And even there's the final tie, 15 shillings at 75 pence times. You multiply that by 50, that gives you what approximately the cost would be now, which would have been now. It's about 40, 50 quid. And there's the teams going out, led out by Jimmy Schooler and Joe Mercer. The drama, as far as Newcastle were concerned, happened long before they got there. And it was because Dougie Livingston had selected his team for Wembley about 10 days before the final. And unfortunately, hadn't put Jackie Milburn in the team. In fact, he wasn't even in the squad. And there was a slight revolution in as much that Captain Schooler, together with centre-half Frank Brennan and Ronnie Simpson, the goalkeeper, like the Scottish trio, went to see Seymour and said, "Hey, he's not going to play Jackie, and we're upset about that." And so Seymour went to Dougie Livingston, the manager, and said, "Dougie, you've got to put Jackie in the side." And Livingston said, "No, I'm the manager. I picked the team, and that's how it's going to stay." And the only way Seymour would get his own way was by sacking Livingston. So a few days before the actual game, we actually sacked our manager. In fact, these papers I'm reading from here still says manager Dougie Livingston. So even they hadn't caught up. But this is typical Newcastle United. There's the two captains and Arthur Ellis, the top referee of the time. And so we go to a game as important as this one with that sort of almost revolution in the dressing room. And we go with the team of Simpson, Cowell, Batty, Schooler, Stoko, Len White, Len Casey, Tommy Casey rather, Len White, Jackie Milburn, Vic Keeble, George Hanna, and Bobby Mitchell. Manchester City were strong favourites. There had been favourites at part of the season to actually do the double, but unfortunately their league form petered off and they didn't get the title. And many people said what used to say about us in the previous finals, that we deliberately held players back for out of the league games so that we'd play in the cup. Anyway, we that was our team. Manchester City, managed by Leslie McDowell, a great Scottish international player and City player before he became manager. City, Bert Trautmann, the German goalkeeper in goal, who a couple of years later was to play in a final against Aston Villa and play the 2/3 of the match with a broken neck. Jimmy Meadows, right back, Roy Little, Ken Barnes, great international fullback, Roy Paul, Welsh international, Billy Spurdy, Joe Hayes, Don Revie, the England manager and manager of the Mackhams at one stage, as well as Leeds manager, Bobby Johnson, dangerous Scottish forward, and Paddy Fagan, an Irish international. A good side, and a side which would take some beating. And we couldn't have got off to a better start. But we got a corner with almost the second kick of the game. It went out for a corner, and we got a corner in to be taken by George Hanna. Manchester City had started to believe the rumours that Jackie Milburn wasn't very good in the air. And unfortunately for them, they left him unmarked on the corner of the penalty area. And Hanna just chipped the ball up, and in ran Jackie and bang, headed it into the back of the net. it's interesting that it's so close to the point where Dan Burns scored our goal in the Carabao Cup. It's uncanny that a Geordie lad should do the same thing again. And that's him. That's the guy who, rumour had it, couldn't head the ball, and they made the mistake of leaving him on his own. So the game progressed. We got to 20 minutes, and that's Jimmy Meadows there right back. And in attempting to stop Bobby Mitchell, there were those who thought that he actually tried to hurt Bobby Mitchell in going in for this particular tackle. Well, the result was he didn't hurt Bobby Mitchell. He twisted his own knee and had to go off. So for the rest of it, and there's the tackle. For the rest of the game, bar those 20 minutes, Manchester City had to play with 10 men because of that injury. But it still was an interesting game. We had Jackie Milburn's goal, got to half time, and just before half time, Bobby Johnson, their Scottish inside forward, scored, nipped in to score from a corner to make it 1-1 at half time. In the second half, it became George Hannah's game. George Hannah, tricky midfielder, just took the game away, and they couldn't touch him. And of course, feeding off him, Mitchell and Milburn were in their glory, giving Manchester City all sorts of headaches. So no surprise on 53 minutes when Bobby Mitchell picked up a through ball by Hannah, and in the ball went. And there's Bobby Johnson's header for the equaliser. Again, George Hannah hardly had the kicked off again. George Hannah went through on his own to make it 3-1. And there was no way, you could say there was no way that Manchester City were going to come back from that. And there's a shot of Ronnie Simpson, the cat as he was known, in the Gallagher corner, challenging for a ball with Don Revie, no less, who was one of their forwards at the time. So it ended as a 3-1 victory, and there's School are getting the cup from the Queen, with the ubiquitous Stanley Rouse, the president of the FA, who was in every picture in football in those days, and a bit like Donald Trump. And there's the lads with Norman Smith as the manager, who had been their trainer, of course. And Seymour very quickly made Norman Smith the manager after he sacked Dougie Livingston. It's interesting, the Dougie Livingston things hung around, because I heard somebody on Sky the other day who was when we went to the Carabao Cup final, going down the list of managers, and they still put Dougie Livingston in for 1955, when in fact he wasn't. Interesting picture from left to right: George Hannah, Alec Much, the physiotherapist, Bobby Mitchell, Jackie Milburn, Tommy Casey, and Ron Batty, all together in that one.
Is that Ron Batty or Bob Stokoe?
Oh, sorry, it's Ron Stokoe. Yes, I'm
Bob Stokoe. Yeah,
Bob Stokoe. Yes, sorry, and George Hannah with the cup. Many thought it was his day. It was really one of the best games he played for Newcastle. And interestingly enough, within the next couple of months, he was actually transferred to Manchester City. He left us and went to Manchester City, which was the second time that had happened, because after we beat Blackpool in 51, Ernie Taylor was such a star that Stanley Matthews insisted that Blackpool bought him to take him to Blackpool to play with him. And that's exactly what happened. And then, of course, we come to the parade, the parades we were getting used to, and I hope we get used to again, and showing that just how we, how the city turns out when we're having a good time. Another picture in the dressing room with Seymour in there himself, and a colour picture, which is of the squad, which is always good to get hold of. And Radio Times' first cup final to be both on radio for all full time and on television all time. So we'll do first. That's Vic Keeble on the left with a souvenir he was given by some fans, I think, on a visit, and that's Vic Keeble with Steve Hasty and Steve Wraith. Great story about Vic Keeble. Vic Keeble was the horse racer in the squad, and always claimed he used to get good tips of this bookie and that bookie, and the lads always quite often made a lot of money out of Vic Keeble. And on the final day, when they got their money for their appearance, which was a paltry £50, Manchester City got 200 each, Newcastle players got £50 each. Vic Keeble said, "Look, give us your £50, and I've got a sure thing on a horse. I'll invest it, and we'll double it, we'll treble it if we back this horse." So they all give Vic £50, and sadly the horse was nowhere to be seen. But at least it gave them all a laugh. They didn't get the promised dividend that Vic had promised them. But he was a character and a lovely man, and I'm not surprised that they were willing to take his word for it. And the other thing about Vic Keeble, for those that didn't see him, he was such a prolific scorer with headed goals. His headed goals were out of this world, and the Gallagher Corner wags used to say that one of these days we'll get a penalty and they'll let Vic take it with his head, which is quite good. So there you are, 1855.
So we're going to go to 1974 with the next Those Were the Days. We're going to the 74 Cup final. Looking forward to that, George. Thanks for your time. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Take care.
Really enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, everybody.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them at www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickies.co.uk, email info@mrvickies.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2-crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach, all excursions included. Their website, unitedgrouptravel.com, email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com, telephone 01670 632 460 or 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And if you like listening to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network or to iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. If you want to support the show, then hit the subscribe button. It's free. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the little thumb up under the video, which is the like button, or click share to share to your social media. You can also join the channel on YouTube by hitting the join button for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to become an NUFC Matters member, you can go to nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. It's a £25 one-off fee. You get your pen, you get your badge, a key ring, you get your beer mat and your fridge magnet and your membership card, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk for that. And we have an event early next year, 13th of February 2026, an evening with Beardsley, Waddle and Gascoigne takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. To buy your tickets for that event, go to the box office 0191 243 1171 or Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk.